Okay, so now we know. Now we know I am Enneagram 8. It's official. And one of the things I was thinking about is how I openly, and I've always been this way, I openly disassociate myself with certain emotions or ideas or concepts if I think that's going to make me look weak. So the entire sadness emotion, no thanks. Fear, no. Disgust, no. Anything that would, what? It's funny because my family watched every episode of Is It Cake? And like often they'll, on the next episode, here's the way we're gonna mix it up. And they do like a shot of the people like, what? Huh? No, like that's even that's being surprised, and that's an emotion that I think falls under ultimately fear. It's like, you can't surprise me. Like, I've lived on this planet 43 years. I've pretty much seen, I know how the world operates. Like, you're not gonna find me surprised. See, even surprise is an emotion that I definitely don't even want to be associated with. But here's another one that I think is interesting, is I've never been afraid of being wrong. And I've mentioned that for years in this channel. I've never seen the show Big Bang Theory, but I know Sheldon, who's an Enneagram 5 actually, main character, there's a meme, this is how I know about it, he says, don't you think if I were wrong, I'd know it? And I love that because it describes a lot of people. But I thought, it will never describe me. I have no fear of being wrong. Because the moment you realize you're wrong, guess what? Now you're right. Because now you know the truth, the revised edition of what's going on, and you're no longer wrong as long as you pivot and start moving towards the new version of truth. Why would I fear being wrong if it gets me to being right? But so when I think of someone who is so set in their ways, and this is the way, this is definite absolute truth, and there's no way I can be wrong about this, well, that's weakness. So I'm not going to associate myself with weakness. And being wrong and not realizing it is weak. Being wrong and realizing it and changing your perspective and actions accordingly, well then that's strength. That's empowering, not only for yourself, but for other people to recognize you're wrong. So for me, I think I'm always, curious is not necessarily a word that describes 8s. When you look up 8s, that's the word for Enneagram 5. But when we look at Joe Rogan, he's a very curious person. And I'm a very curious person. And for the fact I've been studying and even wrote this book on Enneagram myself, I'm always trying to figure out things, not for the sake of simply knowing them, but I think for me, because it gives me a sense of control if I understand better how certain things work. Certain things that I don't care at all how they work. I'm never gonna, how does electricity work? I don't know, I don't care. So let somebody else figure that stuff out. But as far as me, I think of Back to the Future Part 2, the whole plot is about the sports almanac, and then they travel back in time and they bet on it, and they're not really betting because now they know the answers. They know who's gonna win the game. And that's how I feel. Like, I want that. I want the playbook to know what to expect. I walk in the room, and what I'm analyzing, who's in charge here? Who has the most power? Who has the title of being in control? Who actually is in control? Is it me? It can be if it needs to be, but if it doesn't need to be, then it's not me. I'm sorting that out when I walk in the room. I'm figuring out, okay, is there emotions going on in this room? Because I need to make sure that I can navigate that person's emotions. What's the energy like? And so what I'm describing actually is more of the Enneagram 9 wing that I have, the dominant wing. But that's what I'm doing. It's this, and some might say that's manipulation. But for me, it's a cheat code, so I guess it is like manipulation. But if I learn the right things, if I ask the right questions and I study the right things, I'm gonna have the answers that other people don't have because they weren't curious enough. They didn't put in the work like I did. Maybe it's just a quick Google search. I'll figure this thing out in 5 minutes, and then I'm going to be using that knowledge next time as far as it relates to other people in relationships. So my subtype as an 8 is social. So I'm focused actually on navigating my relationships with people, empowering them. But as you know, the whole thing about putting the oxygen mask on first, I have to myself constantly be focusing on self-improvement and figuring out where I'm wrong. So again, that I can become right and already ultimately confidently have the answer. And of course, confidence is most associated with Enneagram 8. Well, one of the ways that you are confident is that you already know the answers. You have that muscle memory. You've done this thing before. So when I don't know the answer, I figure out the answer. And then I'm prepared, and then I'm confident. And I'm confident so people depend on me, and then I have the control that I'm looking for. So that's kind of a diagram of how that works. And why for me as an 8, wing 9, at least my version of existence, I do not fear being wrong. I'm totally okay being wrong. And I think that would also demonstrate a trait of being a healthy 8, because the main way that 8s grow is they become vulnerable. So if I can be an 8 who says, yeah, I can be wrong, and I do, I've said that for years. I said, whatever I believe, there's still a 50% chance that I'm right and a 50% chance that I'm wrong. And maybe at that time I was right about it, but maybe things have shifted. Maybe we know more information now. So whatever's right today, we may get an updated information, and then now I'm suddenly wrong. And being wrong and choosing to live wrong when you know it's wrong, well, that's clearly weakness. So what we see is how I'm navigating as an 8. How can I avoid being associated with weakness? Because if I have the knowledge, it gets me to the place of confidence, which gives me that place of control, which is what I'm looking for. Again, not necessarily controlling other people, but having that control over myself, and ultimately kind of being the default leader. I've said for years, I've noticed this about myself, even at places that I've worked at. I never need a title in order to be in control. I never need a title to be the boss. I also don't need the boss to be in control. Let me say that again. I myself don't need to be an actual boss to be in control. And that's something I really like about my version of existence, is that it's this concept that whatever the rules are, there's always a ways around the rules, and I can figure out what they are. I can find a more efficient way of doing things. I'm an 8 who's very focused on efficiency. And again, ultimately, if I'm more efficient, I can bypass the rules and I can be in control. Even if I'm the only one doing it, oh, maybe that's even better. I'm the guy who's smart enough to have figured it out. Your thoughts belong right here.